WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD P-Rae Easley, hostess of the Black Excellence Hour. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about Black Excellence and how you were able to achieve Black Excellence.
Okay, so Black Excellence Hour is a show for people with high self-esteem. We started off as a radio show on WVON, 1690 AM Chicago. It's the Black political station here in the city, and it's national as well, a legacy station. I had the only right-wing conservative show on that station. I told people that it was very similar to Hannity with a few ain'ts, can'ts, and finnas. It was very right wing, but also very Black American Negro centered. And so it did very well. We gained a lot of notoriety, not only through the listeners, but through local politicians, national figures, political figures, governmental officials. Everyone wanted to come on the Black Excellence Hour. However, we went through some changes and now we are streaming through intellectual radio at 7 p.m. on Sundays on the Intellectual Radio's Facebook page, as well as the Black Excellence Hour's Facebook page. And so the way that this movement came to be is that in 2016, I moved out of America to protest Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel. I grew up very active in my U.S. Congressman's office, Congressman Danny Davis. Hello, Congressman. I love you so much. And I worked there specifically learning about federal housing policies through an initiative called WOW with Ownership Wealth, which had the goal of increasing Black home ownership by 1 million between 2000 and 2010. Well, the subprime crisis occurred and Rahm Emanuel and Barack Obama rapidly demolished the housing stock in my community. So a lot of times people will focus on the fact that Rahm closed 50 schools, but he had to close the schools because he demolished the housing stock. If you don't have homes, then you don't have families, then you don't have children, and then you have empty schools. So they closed empty schools that were in the middle of decimated neighborhoods. On top of the fact that with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, employers were forced to give their employees who had work schedules over 30 hours health insurance. So at the time I was working as an adjunct professor, teaching English to foreign professionals, and I could only get 29 and a half hour schedules because at 30, they would have been forced to give me health insurance. So I had to work at multiple institutions to get a full-time check. I still didn't have health insurance and I had to pay a fine. And so I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to move out of the country. So I moved to sunny Senegal in West Africa with my 4-year-old. And while I was there, I worked as an international English literacy consultant for international schools. However, I told myself that it didn't make sense for me to be in someone else's country and build it up when I have work to do in my own country. So when Donald Trump won, I came back to America, and then I ended up going to the White House with the Young Black Leadership Summit and got red pilled by the President of the United States of America in the White House. And I brought that energy back to Chicago, and here we are.
You were able to overcome some obstacles, right? To become so educated and to be able to think for yourself. So how were you able to overcome obstacles and what kind of obstacles did you have to overcome?
I think the first obstacle that I had to overcome is it was to stop making comfort in chaos. Here in the city of Chicago, it's a chaotic situation. And I think a lot of times people just get overwhelmed with fighting and they don't want to fight anymore. So then they just accept the conditions. So the first thing that I did was I got some self-esteem. I told myself that we deserve better than this. I am an American citizen. No one in this country is doing me a favor. And if neighborhoods can be well organized and safe, my neighborhood can be well organized and safe as well. If People in my family can come across the border through USCIS. So can other people. We shouldn't allow people to crawl in through holes. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be a sanctuary city to attract the cartel to our city and then make us the epicenter of drug trafficking in the United States of America, which then turns our neighborhoods into narco towns and we lose friends and family members to drug overdoses. We don't deserve that. And so that momentum is what made it easier for me to push through the obstacles or the social barriers that people wanted to put up. Obviously, it's not easy being a MAGA supporter here in the city of Chicago, but I knew that eventually, if I kept talking, people would catch on and they would understand that this is not necessarily about Donald Trump, but more so preserving the sovereignty that was given to us via birthright in our own country.
You said that the Rahm Emanuel decimated the black neighborhoods, and
Yes.
in what way? How was he able to decimate the neighborhoods? And do you feel that you understand why he decimated the neighborhoods?
Actually, I understand it very well. So, if we were to look at this from a holistic standpoint, while he was working in Washington, D.C., he lobbied to get the subprime loans sold and on the market. That was the first time that had ever occurred, and he was very instrumental in that process. Okay. And so once people lost their homes through the subprime crisis, that the Senate discovered was not exclusively, but substantially marketed toward the Black community. They knew that people would lose their homes. Okay, again, the Congressional Black Caucus is getting people in the homes, and the banking lobby is going behind them and pulling them out of the homes. So Rahm knew that all of this was going to happen. Then Barack Obama sent him to Chicago to become mayor of Chicago, and he oversaw the demolitions of the homes that were foreclosed upon. So people didn't even have the opportunity to buy it back because now we have neighborhoods and blocks full of vacant lots. We have closed schools. So people were not able to come back to the neighborhoods that they were tricked out of. And the Democratic Party sat by and let this occur. I'm just a regular woman who can read and understand English well. But we have an actual government that was supposed to protect us, and they did not. And Rahm Emanuel was in charge of that operation here in the city of Chicago.
Do you feel that there was their intention to take advantage of the black people to sell them homes at subprime rates and then take those homes away from them?
Yes, ma'am. They actually came up with that conclusion during the Senate hearings because there were lots of hearings about it. And that was the conclusion out of the hearing, that they specifically targeted Black communities with these faulty instruments to take away their homes. And again, nobody did anything about it. That's what literally chased me out of the country, because my heart was broken that they allowed such a terrible thing to occur and for our neighborhoods and our generational wealth to be decimated like this. When Obama left office, Black America lost 70% of our wealth. That's everything that we've earned since 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation, all the way to 2016. We lost 70% of it through that subprime crisis. So how could I, a person in good faith, someone who loves myself, who loves my family, who loves my community, and loves my country, how could I support that organization anymore? I can't. So it's time to move on. So my self-esteem is stronger than any opposing messages that I can get.
And who benefited the most from that subprime fiasco?
The banks, the banking lobbies.
And the banking lobby was behind it then, that they helped plan the whole process so that they would gain more profits.
Correct.
So it was the special interest that they were serving then, in other words.
Correct. Yes, ma'am. Barack Obama was a corporatist. So he put corporate interests above all else. And so because he was a corporatist, but masquerading himself as a friend of the Black community, he was able to help them take away 70% of our wealth and go, just leave kind of unscathed. But now that everybody understands what happened, along with the work that we're doing here in the city of Chicago, we're moving away from the Democratic Party. There has to be some accountability for that.
Do you know if how many of the white people, what percentage of the white people were affected by the subprime crisis as well?
Oh, well, people of all races were affected. However, these programs were specifically targeted toward Black people and Black people who qualified for better loans. However, they pushed everyone into the subprime crisis. There were people who were speculators coming around, taking people's property. There's a guy named Mark Diamond who was just sentenced last week to 17 years in prison because he's been over here scamming people out of their homes for 20 years and he stole $6 million worth of property right here on the west side of Chicago. Who's held accountable for that? We have a government in play. Why did it take them all of these years to catch him? That's what I'm saying. We understand that the Democratic Party is not interested in protecting us. They're interested in using our faces and our social and political capital to advance platforms that don't help us. We can look around in our communities, open the door, look to the left and to the right, and see that the policies of the Democratic Party aren't serving us.
Do you think that most politics serve special interests?
Yes, because everybody needs to buy yard signs. That's the whole thing. We, the people, are competing against a yard sign fund because everyone needs yard signs, everyone needs commercials, everyone needs fundraisers. So they would rather bow to the special interest than the actual needs of the voters.
What about the Republicans? Do they have any special interests as well?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. This is America, and both parties have special interests. However, the villain of the story here in the city of Chicago is the Democratic Party. We're running away from the villain. It's not necessarily that we are going to the Republican Party to say, oh, we want to be Republicans, although they are the party that emancipated my people in this country, although they're the party that has advanced civil rights every single time that we had them. They are the party that made the Democratic Party stop using domestic terrorism against us in the form of Jim Crow. It took an act of Congress to make them stop. So we understand who they are. However, the Republican Party has not harmed us in the city of Chicago. We don't know anything about the white Republican boogeyman here in Cook County, but we do know about the Democratic Party, and that's why we have to move on.
So the Democrats, at least during the subprime crisis, they benefited the banking lobby. What other special interests were the Democrats serving?
Well, I'm not sure. I just know it from a banking perspective because I was in college earning a finance degree as this was happening. So I was studying it in real time. And again, when I came back to my community and I saw the wrecking balls, I mean, these were homes where people had raised families for decades. And then a wrecking ball just comes and knocks down an entire block. Why? You know, those houses are stable. Give the people a chance to buy them back. But he didn't want that because their goal was to depopulate Illinois, Cook County, and Chicago of Black people so that they could bring up these new people that they've been recruiting from Venezuela to take our place in the count, but not necessarily the vote. Because congressional districts are measured by population. So if you have enough bodies here, it doesn't matter whether or not they can vote. So then they're ruled by a special small voting class, but everyone, you know, is counted the same. And that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to diminish the voter, or they wanted to, in a way, disenfranchise the voters here by diluting their votes, by bringing up lots of people who can't vote. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So, what you're saying is that when the Hispanic, the South American, Central American immigrants come in here, and then they cannot vote, then they diminish the whole voting block of the city.
Correct. Yes,
Mhm.
ma'am, because you have more people present than can actually vote. So what it does is, for instance, let's say if Black people said, hey, you guys forced us out of the city, and therefore we're going to vote Republican and we're going to leave the Democratic Party. Well, it doesn't matter to the Democratic Party because they've already replaced those numbers with non-voters. So you see what I'm saying? It doesn't have the same impact. We need those people to not to be counted so that we can actually attract, so that the state and the government will start attracting actual citizens back to the city so that we can strengthen our political capital. but they're not trying to give us that. They're trying to dilute our political capital by creating conditions to make people leave the state, city, and county, and then replacing them with non-voting people.
There seems to be in the past, and I don't know how much in the present as well, a lot of African Americans don't feel that their vote counts, and they actually don't vote. Do you know how many do vote, and how much of that block was affected by that subprime crisis?
Well, all of us were affected. I'm not sure about how many vote or don't vote. However, even if they chose to vote, their vote is still diluted by people who are being counted that don't vote or that can't vote, that will never be able to vote, but yet they're being allocated in the tax allocation. I don't think that tax dollars should be going to people who are here undocumented. Absolutely not. No money, not a dime, because we have American people who need these American dollars. That's it. This is why we go to work and pay taxes so that we can take care of our citizens first. And once the needs of all the citizens are taken care of, then we can go and possibly give money to others or give attention to others. But right now, America is in the middle of an invasion, and that has to be properly solved. I mean, we have to do something about that.
And how does it benefit the Democrats to allocate money to the immigrants instead of to the African Americans?
Because eventually those immigrant families will become voters. Their children will become voters, or they'll get amnesty and be able to vote. The Democratic Party has been invested in attracting immigrants to their party since the end of the Civil War, because the actual Americans knew that they were monsters who declared war on the United States of America in order to keep the freedmen enslaved. So when they got these new waves of immigrants who came here in the 1800s. They infected them with those Confederate Democrat mentalities. And then those were the people who executed Red Summer. Those are the people who were burning down black towns and lynching people and doing all of those things. The immigrant population that was infected by the Democratic Party. Even here in the city of Chicago, when we had the Chicago riot in 1919, that was the Irish immigrants against the Negro population. So that we know what's going on. And so because the Democrats have been very invested in working with the immigrant population, that's just what they do. But now they want to lump the African, or not African American, excuse me, they want to lump the American Negro in with the immigrant population in order to allow them to take advantage of our social and political capital. So that's why we are minorities. This is why we are people of color. Now I have to be lumped in with non-white immigrants as if I am not a full American, because this is what the Democratic Party has decided, because they have never seen me as a full American. And therefore, we got to get away from them.
So what you're saying is that the Democratic Party is trying to give immigrants more rights than they do African Americans. But it's as if they were able to actually help African Americans, give the resources to African Americans, wouldn't they have the African American support? And why would they insist on not giving resources to African Americans? What do they gain by not giving resources to African Americans? Because it's if they treat them fairly, treat them right, and help them, then they would get their support, and would help the African Americans, and that would help the Democratic Party. What is keeping them from doing that, from helping African Americans?
Well, they've never been interested in helping African Americans. That's my point. These are the Confederates. These are the slave masters. These are the people who have always worked to keep us in a horrible position. The Democratic Party used the Ku Klux Klan as their guerrilla warfare arm. These are the people who gave us abortions. The Black community didn't ask for that. They gave us abortions because they wanted to control the Black population and said that we were multiplying like weeds. So this is who they are. However, when our grandparents left the South and came to the North during the Great Migration, they were literally, physically, mentally, and socially terrorized into joining the Democratic Party. My grandmother said that when she and my grandfather came here when they were 16 and 20, my grandfather wanted to get a driver's license. And so he, called around. They sent the Democratic committeeman to their house. And that committeeman said, first thing you got to do is sign up for my organization and give me $5. And then after you do that, then I'll help you get your driver's license. They would do things like break people's car windows. They would prevent you from getting municipal services. They would stop you from getting municipal jobs. They would stop you from joining unions if you were not aligned with the Democratic Party. And so it got so out of control that the Shackman Decree came out, I believe, in the late 70s, which was a federal decree making the city of Chicago stop bullying people into joining the Democratic Party. This is who they are. So
Uh,
because they have already bullied people into joining their party, now the people feel like they're stuck. And we're telling people that time is finished. We're not dealing with the old machine. We're dealing with the democratic socialists, and we don't have to align ourselves with their chaos.
and during your grandfather's time, was that the first daily?
Yes.
It was the first daily that we heard try to get a lot of property out of the African Americans' hands. And then the UIC development was to uh, just segregate, get the African Americans out, and also the Cabrini Green development as well. So that kind of fits with what you are saying.
It's all the same. Again, these people take pride in terrorizing Black people. So
And,
they were having the same issues in the early 1900s that we were having in the early 2000s that we're having now. The Democratic Party does not care about Black people. They only care about, again, using our social and political capital to advance their causes. But they've done nothing for us. I mean, look around. We've been here, we've been free since 1865, full citizens. And ever since then, we've been fighting against the Democratic Party to get things that are entitled to us as American citizens. Why won't they stop? It's because we keep engaging them. And that's why we have to stop talking to them.
and you said that they use the Black Americans' social and political capital. It seems as if they're trying to according to what you say, they're trying to prevent you from using your political and social capital. Why would they have insist on uh, barring African American social and political capital and not the Latino social and political capital? What is it do they have against
We
African Americans and not instead of other non-whites?
Well, we are non-immigrants. Latinos are immigrants. Asians are immigrants. Europeans are immigrants. We are not. So when people look at America, we are seen as the most authentic form of America, of Americana. I always tell people, when you think of America, think of me. Okay, I am an eighth generation free American of African, European, and Native descent. No one is more American than me, and people understand that. So when Black people speak, this is why we drive national trends, because we've been here the longest. We are foundational. And so when we speak, the people follow. That's why. That's the only reason why. They just need us for validation. And once we give them that validation, they throw us back into the pile to beg with everyone else. And we're not doing that anymore because we are full and free Americans. We don't have to accept that.
When the colonists brought the African American Africans over to the U.S., what is the term for those Africans? They're of course they're slaves, but they're not. Are they supposed to be migrants? Are they immigrants? Are
No,
they slaves?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, 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 no. Immigration happens. willfully. That's the first thing. But what people also have to understand is that we are not solely African. We also have very strong native bloodlines. My family is from Greenwood, Mississippi, which is a Negro Choctaw town. I have Choctaw blood running in this body, which makes me native to this land, and I'm not unique in that. Lots of us have that native bloodline. So, no, we are part of the non immigrant class. Anybody that was here pre 1865, you are a foundational American. After the Union came together in 1866, anyone who came after that time is an immigrant. So we are not looking at ourselves as immigrants. We've never been an immigrant. We don't know anything about Ellis Island. We don't know anything about ICE. We don't know anything about the U.S. Customs Immigration Service because that's not our business. We are as native to this land as the Native Americans. And that's what people have to understand. We can't be deported. There's nowhere to send me to because, again, my ancestors are buried in this ground, flesh and bone. And therefore, we will not be looped or lumped into conversations that advance anybody other than us anymore. We have to look at ourselves as a standalone tribe.
So the Dailies, they were Irish and they were immigrants too. So they are non-foundational and they also are deserve to be deported as well, right? Because they.
Correct. Well, if their papers aren't correct. So let's say if you just came from Ireland 5 years ago on a visa and your visa has expired, you have to go. I don't understand how this is a conversation. You can't do this in anybody else's country. When your papers are up, you have to go back to the embassy and get them restamped, or you have to leave the country. Why is it that in the United States of America, we don't have that law or we don't enforce that law? No, we must enforce that law because since the 1800s, starting with Frederick Douglass, we've been knowing that unvetted immigration directly hurts the wealth, safety, and security of Black America. We know that to be a fact. We know that we are the most affected by immigration. So there's no way we can stand with it because, again, that's not our story. That's not who we are. We were here in the beginning. The first person to die for this country was Crispus Attucks, a Negro Native man in Massachusetts. So we've been here longer than everybody else. We know all of the secrets, and we are not foreigners to this land.
What about President Trump's family? Are they foundational
No,
Americans or is he an immigrant as well?
he's an immigrant as well. His mother is a German immigrant. I think his father had been here for a while. But they're German immigrants. They're not foundational. Barack Obama is non-foundational. I guess he could be because I know that the Dunham family has been here for a while. So they could be foundational in that way. He's foundationally Irish, but definitely Kenyan foreign. And we have to understand that, and we have to know that Barack Obama is not the same as me. He's not in my tribe. He is not us at all. He is not an American Negro. He is a Kenyan Irishman. And that's what we're talking about, delineation. We will not be lumped together because of our skin color, because we have a different relationship with the United States of America than anybody else.
Are there any political activists among the foundational Blacks that aspire to political office? Because you would be more foundational than President Trump.
Yes, and we push for that. That's one of the reasons that there was so much pushback against Kamala Harris, because we said she's not foundational. She's a Jamaican Indian woman trying to tell us that she's the same as us, and she's not. We have to figure out why hasn't either party elevated the American Negro to a higher position. The highest position that our people have ever held in this country was Secretary of State, and that was Condoleezza Rice. She's the highest, and not even Colin Powell because he's a Jamaican. So Condoleezza was the highest Negro hire in the United States history. And we have to figure out why. How did we allow a Kenyan Irishman to ascend to presidency or a Jamaican Indian woman to ascend to the vice presidency before we could, and we've been here the longest?
How do we draw the line between, for instance, deporting some of these immigrants already hold power. So where do we draw the line of deporting immigrants In
Just the ones here illegally, not all immigrants. All immigrants don't have to go. If you came here legally, we have your fingerprint, we have your picture, your papers are in order, you can stay. But if your papers are not in order, if you came in through a hole in the gate, if you are here committing crimes and causing chaos, you got to go. That's the line. It's a very clear line. And we look at the dreamers and we say, oh, well, the dreamers came here as children. They still broke a law. If I robbed a bank and my daughter was with me, they wouldn't allow her to keep the money because she's a child. No, there are consequences for breaking laws in the United States of America. That's the cornerstone of our freedom. The fact that you have to follow the law. And I don't think that it's fair that we're making all of these concessions for people who chose to break the law in our country. Everyone knows the process. No one was tricked. It's just that now people won't be able to get away with it much longer.
what you're saying that they are doing this because it's serving their political interests, their special interests that they're doing it. It's not out of the goodness of their heart. It's out of serving their own special interests.
Correct.
The what about the Republicans? You say that they might have special interests as well. It would it be would their special interests also harm uh, Black Americans' interests as well?
Yes, their trade agreements definitely do. Any trade agreement would hurt Americans, but Black Americans. For instance, NAFTA, even though I know that that was passed under Bill Clinton, that had, Republican support. NAFTA closed factories in Black communities all around the country because our people, when they left the South, moved to manufacturing districts in order to provide for their families. So when you do the trade agreements, that hurts people's families. When you talk about, let's say, well, I don't know. That's the one I can think of off the top of my head. Definitely the trade agreements are problematic. And that's another reason that we support President Trump, because he wants to roll back some of these trade agreements and bring American manufacturing home.
What about Detroit? Any plans on President Trump's agenda for Detroit? Because it used to be a bustling town, and now it's quite gone uh, compared to what it was. What about towns like that? Black Americans, were there a lot of Black Americans working in Detroit?
Yes, Detroit is a black city. It's 87% black. In
Exactly.
Detroit, that's what he said. American cars are going to be made in America now. We're going to bring those contracts back home. We're going to put tariffs on foreign parts. All of these things have to occur in order to make America great again. We can no longer continue to subsidize the third world with our tax dollars when the American public is suffering. No, we deserve better than that.
But when they do subsidize the third world countries, what does the U.S. gain from that? And yeah,
Access to those countries, access to the land, access to the resources. And we understand that. We definitely understand that. But I think that there's a way for us to do that without exporting American jobs and wealth.
and so you think that the U.S. still should try to access third world countries then?
Absolutely. We live in a globalized economy. However, our aims must be nationalistic, because again, America is for the Americans. And then after we take care of the Americans, then we can look at how we can help the rest of the world. But we must be our own priority.
Well, it seems as if on the surface they're helping the third world countries, but they're actually harming the third world countries. They just want access, not aiding the third world countries. So how would they be able to help the U.S. by treating the third world countries the same or differently? It's,
Um, I think that we just have to analyze foreign aid at this point. I know that foreign aid has been frozen for 90 days as we look at how those dollars are being spent and allocated. We also understand that foreign aid has been used in the past to destabilize governments and economies. So we are looking to push for world peace, not world chaos. So I think once they do the analyzation of how the money is being spent and what the results have been, then we'll have a better, more robust foreign aid system that won't be so corrupted. I mean, we're in Ukraine right now because of a foreign aid mishap. And we know that Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden, were at the core of that. You know, they stopped the investigation for Burisma Oil and Gas, which was a state's owned agency in Ukraine that wanted the pipelines to go from Russia through Ukraine so that they could collect tolls and fees. Well, Joe said, if you guys continue to investigate this, I'm going to hold up $2 billion of foreign aid. So then they stopped the investigation, fired the prosecutor, and now we're in the middle of a war. You see, so all of that has to be analyzed.
And what about the oil companies? If President Trump is going to drill and then increase the coal production as well, will those special interests in oil and coal be served with this kind of agenda?
I'm sure they will. However, foreign oil and foreign coal won't be served by his act, and that adds more jobs and wealth to the American economy. Again, our goal is to serve Americans and make sure that the American people are able to put food on their table every night.
And also, President Trump recently met with the Saudis. What happened over there? Did they agree to something? How are they going to be working together?
I believe the Saudis are going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into the American infrastructure, and I think that that's fair. I don't know the specifics of it, but instead of us investing out, now he's making countries pay into the United States for the services that we've provided.
Would the U.S. be also owing something to the Saudis in return? And if so, what could or would that be?
I'm sure it's regional security, as we've always done with them. However, when President Trump was in office last time and had the Keystone Pipeline, and we were doing our own production, that didn't, cause any issues in the Middle East. We were actually able to leverage better deals, such as the Abrahamic Accords, to make sure that people understand that the peace that we want people to have is not dependent upon oil prices or access to oil. We are actually going for real world peace.
So for this agenda for uh, President Trump helping Black Americans access resources, how long do you think it will be before African Americans actually see those resources coming to them instead of going to the immigrants?
I hope within the next 3 to 6 months. I mean, we have the migrants here. They're getting food stamps, thousands by the month, cash, thousands by the month. Maybe they'll take that money and give it to the Chicago public school students who want to eat. There are other ways that we could take everything that they're getting and reallocate that back to the American people. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't think it's going to be a long process.
3 to 6 months. And it seems as if no one, not white Americans nor African Americans, ever got that much money in food stamps before. Do you have any insight about why? And that money went to the migrants uh, to do what you earlier mentioned about uh, securing that the voting block power because they can't vote?
Well, I don't know. That's what we're all about that. That's what we're all. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could see you back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what we're all still trying to figure out. Why are they so special? Nobody understands.
And that money was just coming from where? Only the COVID relief money, or was that money
Tax
flowing out of
tax
some
funds as
other,
well,
from where?
from tax dollars as well. The first 53 million that they gave to the undocumented people was COVID relief money. I'm sorry, give me one moment.
Sure, that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that was actually COVID relief money. I mean, not COVID, opioid settlement money. The first $51 million that the Chicago City Council gave to the migrants was money that was set aside in an opioid settlement fund. That money was supposed to be used to build rehabs in the city of Chicago. And we know that we have an opioid crisis here. So with $51 million, you could have put $1 million rehab in each ward. Instead, they didn't do that. They gave it to people who have never paid a dime into our system. And that's what makes it so offensive. Because again, why do they deserve the money that's set aside to make our families healthier?
Do you know if the Afghans or the Ukrainians did they get any of that money?
Probably not because they came in through a different setup or a different program. They came in through the refugee resettlement, which was already allotted for, accounted for. The State Department had a budget. They knew how many people were coming. But with this migrant crisis, no one knows. So these people are just coming, and we're throwing more and more money at them to make them safe and comfortable. And it's not going to stop because our city has been magnetized for illegal immigration through our sanctuary city ordinance.
And that money, has it all been accounted for? Has it all actually been going to these migrants, or has it been siphoned off to in kickbacks or any or maybe something else? Is there any transparency? Is there any record of the flow of where the money actually went?
That's what we're asking for now. No one knows where the money went. No one knows how the money has been spent. They spent a $500 million on them, and we don't see a $500 million worth of services. We still see people outside begging, women and children trying to get food and shelter. So something happened with the money, and that's why we want President Trump and Pam Bondi, who is the Attorney General, to come here and do an audit and make the appropriate charges.
When when you say that you've asked about that money, who has asked before, and were they not answered when they asked?
I believe a couple of aldermen asked, and they still haven't been provided with those numbers.
Which alderman, do you know?
I know specifically Alderman Ray Lopez.
Okay. All right. And then so who will be coming to audit these monies now?
Well, I hope the Attorney General of the United States of America, Pam Bondi, will
Okay.
come with the Department of Justice because there has obviously been some fiscal mismanagement here that warrants a criminal investigation.
Have you asked Pam Bondi to come to Chicago to audit the money?
Not directly. I'm looking forward to meeting her so that we can ask for that audit and a couple of other things that have to be cleared out here in the city.
Okay. And besides Ray Lopez, was there anybody else that wanted to audit that money that was given to the migrants?
He's the only person that I can think of off the top of my head.
Mm. Was it that other people did not talk about it, or was it even on the radar of city council meetings or any other meetings, Cook County meetings? Was it, or even the Illinois legislature? Uh, this money uh, trail was never addressed.
No, not to my knowledge. It's never been addressed, not
Mm.
publicly. They haven't told us how the money was allocated at all.
And well, besides Ray Lopez, what about you and your African American friends and uh, the people who are with you in as the
Oh,
similar?
absolutely. We've asked for these audits. We want to know where the money is. How was the money spent? Where did it come from? We've asked this over and over again, but they haven't given us any feedback.
And what about the mainstream media? Have you asked the mainstream media to investigate, and have how have they responded?
I've said that we need an audit and an investigation on Fox News and on Newsmax and on One America News Network because the Chicago Teachers Union has been going to Venezuela for over a decade, literally recruiting people to come to the city of Chicago. Why would a municipal teachers union be going down to a country where the United States has no diplomatic ties to recruit people? That has to be looked at. And this is not a secret. If anyone Googles this, they can see that this actually legitimately occurred.
So you're saying that the Chicago Teachers Union went to Venezuela to recruit the teachers?
Multiple times, not teachers, people. They were down there telling people to come to the US. I'm sorry, ma'am, I have to take this call. Hold one moment, please.
That's okay. All right. If our listeners want to learn more about you, P-Rae Easley, where should they go?
They can find me at chicagored.org. You can also follow me on X at chicagoredp and like Black Excellence Hour on Facebook. I hope to hear from you all soon.
All right. Thank you so much, P-Rae Easley of Black Excellence Hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.